but it's just very nice and easy.
It is easy. It's easy. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
This time, we ask that you turn off your portable electronic devices or turn them to airplane mode.
Welcome to this episode of Strata Originals Podcast. Today we have Nisha Purushothaman, and I am so happy I got that out the first try. Welcome, Nisha. Today we're going to hear about a journey of self-discovery, how you overcame challenges, what you learned from your journey, and I'm excited to get going. So why don't we start by just introducing yourself a little bit. You're an entrepreneur, investor, and coach, but you started as a CEO in the hospitality industry, right?
Thank you, Leanne. It's great to be here, and I'm very happy to share my story with you. I am an entrepreneur, investor, and now a coach. So I started my business life or my career in India working for my family business. And one of the great things about being in a family business is that you get the top position right away. So I didn't really have to work my way up too much, but I worked with my family business for about nearly 30 years because I started very young. Even when I was in college, I would go work with my father because that's all that I ever wanted to do. I thought that was my path, that's my purpose in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
I went off and ran. I started young, ran all these multiple businesses that we had. The hospitality business was one of them, but we were also in the alcoholic beverage business and the sugar business and so on. So I, went across all these businesses and worked across all these businesses. And so I did that for, as I said, almost 30 years. And that's when I felt that all of a sudden, is this it? Is this all that I'm ever going to do? Is there anything more? Of course, there were a lot of other things happening in my personal life as well, which kind of acted like a catalyst, right? Because I went through a bad divorce. Of course, then also you have all these issues about self-worth, validation, or, what is my identity and so on. So there were all these things happening within me, and that's when I thought I had to go out and do something else. And I decided to move away from the family business and also relocate to Singapore. So for me, that was the first big step because I would like to say that it gave me a moment of pause.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we are so busy in life, we're busy doing things, we really cannot see further because there is no clarity because we're so caught in the busyness. And coming away, moving from my family business and all of that, leaving that situation, moving to Singapore, actually helped me put that distance between what I was doing and my current situation. And that kind of helped me get that moment of pause, which helped me to self reflect and introspect and see what next and what is my path going forward.
So where were you coming from before you went to Singapore?
I was in India. In terms of physically, I was in India working for my family business. But in terms of mind space, where I was a lot of confusion. It was kind of complete fog. I was chatting about that earlier today about how I was in a mind fog. I really didn't know what to do next. And it's very easy for people on the outside who are looking at you and going like, "Hey, you've done all these things. You've got all this wide experience in different businesses. So it's not that difficult for you to go away and do something, right?" So I did do that. I did go out and try different businesses, try to set up new businesses and so on. But somehow I felt that I was hitting roadblock after roadblock. And now on reflection, I find that was because that was not what I really wanted to do. So deep inside, there is something which kind of a larger force probably would says that, hey, you know what, that's not what you want to do. There is
Right.
this part of us which really does know. So it's not that we have complete lack of clarity or confusion. We do know, but it's sometimes the knowing gets lost in all the busyness of life.
Yeah. So why Singapore?
So Singapore just happened to be because my boys had to move to Singapore because they have a national service obligation to do here. because part of the residency rules in Singapore is that you have to do a national service. So they have to do 2 years in the army in Singapore. So it just happened that I could move here because of that. And that's the reason. But it also helped, COVID helped because COVID meant that I had to move with my boys. Because if not, they would have moved here and I could have, stayed on in India. But that was the reason I moved. So it's like all the circumstances also came together to kind of force me to go into that period of introspection and self-reflection.
So what happened when you got there?
So
What
when
was
I
that
came here,
process?
of course, process it was very difficult because initially I come here and I'm wondering, okay, I'm so used to doing things like getting up in the morning and the first thing you do is go to work and there are things and everything keeps coming at you, right? You don't have to really sit around and wait. Especially in India, there's something happening all the time. And yeah, so it is quite chaotic there. So, but I loved the chaos. I loved the thrill of doing things, solving all these little problems, and I really loved that, and I missed that because I just felt that there was not enough stimulation. I'm not doing much, and that was a period when I felt really terrible about myself.
Mm.
And I think we've spoken about this before. That was a period where I really thought of myself as a complete failure because as I sat down and as I was reflecting about my life and how it had been, it had unfolded until then, and I looked at the various roles that I played, and I thought that okay, where am I now? It looks like okay, maybe I've done these things, but I'm a complete failure. What do I have to show for it? Uh, and that was like I would say the lowest point in my life because I felt I'd failed as an entrepreneur or a business owner because I've moved away. It's just that I dropped everything and moved. And I thought I'd failed in my marriage because I only have a divorce to show for the marriage. And also I wasn't a great mom because I didn't really spend as much time with my kids when they were growing up. So it was all this. I was okay. Then how do I grade myself in on life? I've done very poorly, and what next? So that's where I was at that point in time.
And what did you learn from feeling like you were a failure?
I think the most important lesson for me is how to define failure. Our definition, and I think almost always when we look at failure, we have to look at the other side, success, right? And when I say definition of failure, it is a definition of success. What defines success for us? And I found that my definition of success was were all about other people.
Oh,
It's about how my family viewed me, how other people viewed me. It's everything is the metrics were all something based on others and not what was true to me. And I thought that that was a starting point for me. I thought, hey, this is not my definition. So why am I so caught up in trying to live up to this? So that was the first step, and I said it helped me actually accept parts of me that I had rejected. All the skills and capabilities that I always knew I had, but I thought that was for the purpose of using for business. Uh, I and that was a path that I took. I didn't realize that this was also an alternate, like the coaching part of it. I didn't realize at that point in time this is an alternative pathway I could see, because for me coaching is very sedate. It's not. It doesn't have the thrill and the excitement of running a business. And also in terms of scale, I mean, what do I do with coaching? How much money can you make with coaching? It's all these kind of thoughts which were there in my head. So will I be valued? Will people think I'm doing something valuable if I go into coaching? So these are all thoughts which were going on in my head because in my past life, it was all about business. I was conditioned to think that only if I did certain things in life would I be considered valuable. And although this definition, as I said, these definitions of success or failure came from other people, I'm not saying that they are the ones who put that into my head, but it's what we choose, right? So we kind of look at our environment and say, okay, these are the things we need to pick up. And then from our environment, we pick up these definitions which are not right. We don't realize that this is not ours.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you had to redefine success, failure, what is valuable, because it's really not up to anybody else. I mean, it's maybe your upbringing, but you kind of had to redefine who you were in your head and what the definitions of all those important things are.
Absolutely. And for me now, when I look at success, it's not success. Of course, my definition of success has changed. But more than that, when I look at what next, I also look at what really excites me. And what really gets me going. In the past, I thought it was a family business. I thought, okay, that's what I'm passionate about. But then I think in a way that's also run out over a period of 30 years. Of course, I guess it has run out, right? And sometimes we don't also realize our phases in life change, and as our life stages change, what excites us then is not necessarily what excites us now. So
Yeah.
at this point in time, I find that the coaching part of it really excites me, because what excites me is actually talking to people, understanding different perspectives, and sometimes also using my experiences um, to help people navigate through their issues. And that's the whole thing. But in while coaching, I also don't like to, I would like to say that my approach is not telling people what to do, but actually only holding space for them.
Yeah.
So that people, I believe that we all have inherent wisdom in us and we know the answers. Sometimes we just don't, or we haven't created the space for us to get to those answers. So
Yeah.
it's nice to have someone who will hold that space so that, and also guide us so that we can get to those answers ourselves.
Exactly. So that they can go through a bit of the discovery process similar to what you did, only you didn't have somebody asking you the questions to help get you there. So is that the kind of coaching that you do, is sort of the on the journey or on definitions of success, or is it general business? Is it what kind of coaching is it that you provide?
Well, I would say that this is something which kind of has parts of everything, in the sense that it is not just related to, I don't want to say life coach, because sometimes that, that word has been overused now, but it's more, even if it's career, I understand the business perspective. And usually this is a problem which most people in business have, because we think that this is all there is. We put in our all, because we, and especially as women, right, we really think that we need to compete in a man's world. So in some cases we have to disregard other parts of our life and focus on the work to be successful at work. But after a while, we come to that point in time when we think that, okay, is that all? What next? And that question of what next, a lot of people in the business world arrive at that. And I feel that I understand that. I understand the issues these people have probably gone through with trying to prioritize work over everything else and then feeling completely empty
Yeah.
after a few years. So that's where I believe I can add value with my experiences. And also, as I said, holding space for them so that they can come up with their own unique answers.
Do you find that people have some of the same common issues as far as their journey? Just because when you were talking, I was thinking of how many other CEOs I know that are going into what we'll call chapter 3, maybe, of their career, and getting out of a CEO role and going, okay, I've been defined as a CEO for so long, I don't know who I am anymore when I'm not a CEO. Right? So
Absolutely.
is it that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I would say that it's so it's surprising how no matter where we come from, our cultures, whether men or women, we all go through the same issues. We come to that one stage where we ask the same existential questions about who am I, what am I doing, and sometimes and I like that what you said. Sometimes us over identifying with our role of CEO, business leader, and so on. It's that over identification with the role which becomes the problem. And that happens to everyone. And I've seen with all the people that I've spoken to, I've seen how it doesn't really change. Sometimes the circumstances or stories change a little bit, but more or less, generally, they follow the same script.
Really? So
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who was sort of in that stage trying to redefine themselves and success and what value they're providing?
I would say, rather than asking the questions, is getting people to share about what they're really feeling, because the questions come out of that sharing. So it's not me leading and saying, okay, you know what are you doing? But it's just giving them that space. Because very often, someone who is caught in that kind of a situation, either they're in a complete fog, they don't know what's happening, and they say, okay, come on, give me the answers. Or the other side is they think that they know all the answers, but still things are not working, and therefore I'm like really frustrated. So it's giving that space where people can really express themselves and share. And from that, you find that more of these topics really come out. You are able to identify what the issues are. And it's prompting and maybe even really nudging them along that path and saying, you know what, maybe there's more here. That is, I think, something which really helps, rather than telling them, okay, these are my set questions. Do you want to answer them? And then, at the end of it, you have your answer.
Yeah, it's just sometimes I find with people, they don't even know like where to start sharing, or they don't know what they're feeling, right? Like you said, they're in a fog. So, and I was just thinking, we do discovery with people when we're working with them on their personal brand. One of the questions that we ask is about passion. And a lot of people don't know how to define passion or what passion would be. I had to come up with situations to give them an example. So passion isn't necessarily love, because we all love our mothers, our fathers, our kids, our dogs, cats, brothers, sisters, boyfriends, girlfriends, everything. We love everybody. It's more about what makes your heart sing, or what makes your heart hurt, or what really upsets you. Those are usually the things that you feel passionate about, and things that you feel you were destined to change. And so I just wondered if, when they're sharing and they say, I don't even know what success is anymore because I've had so much success, but it's not fulfilling me. How many times have you heard that? I've heard it a million times when people get to that chapter 3. And so I just wondered if there was a process for taking them through things to consider. And, because I think a lot of times that's the biggest problem too, is they don't know how to define success now because they've had so much of it.
So if I have to give you an answer in kind of in a coaching from a coaching perspective, and like 3 points that we could do to look at something like that, I can encapsulate whatever I've learned in my journey until now, and say that the first thing is, as you rightly said, passion, right? But what is passion? Passion is excitement. And especially when you're trying to look at what you want to do, it's looking at the different opportunities that you have and looking at what really excites you, what gets you going.
Yeah.
And sometimes people may come back and said, I've had people who come back and said, oh, but I don't know. I don't know what excites me. There's nothing that excites me. I'm just going through this phase in my life where it's a lot of doubt, nothing is clear, and I have nothing that excites me. But that's because they're still caught in the busyness of doing. So that means they have to make space.
Yeah.
So you have to make space for things to happen. And to make space, sometimes if you get into a play mode, the space always happens. So it is when we get into something where we're very stressed, then the energy around it is very different. We are not able to really see very clearly. So if you get into a play mode, then things become a lot clearer, because you're relaxed. When you're naturally relaxed, you're able to see the excitement. If not, you're not even, passion could come and hit you in the face and you don't know what it is because you don't see it. But once you quieten down and have that moment of pause, which can come through play also, is when you can really see that excitement. And then okay, this is maybe something which you're passionate about. The other reason why people probably don't see the passion is, or feel the excitement is, especially in the business world, a lot of people are so hung up about certainty. You really want to know where everything is going to go. So I was that way, where if there were different opportunities, I needed to know where each one of them would take me. I wanted to be in control of the entire situation. So I'd like to plan ahead, look at different scenarios and so on. But sometimes you really don't need to do that. I always, explain it to people that when you're walking down the road and there's a lot of fog, you really don't need to see, like, what, so many yards in front of you, as long as you know where you're going to put your next step, because that's all that you can do, right? If you know where you're going to place your next step, that's fine. As long as you know where you're going, that's fine. And then the final thing is having absolute trust. And it's to help people get to that point of trust. When you play and when you experiment, you can then get to this point where you have absolute confidence and you build that trust. Then it's momentum. Once you have one small thing going your way, then the momentum builds up. So, and sometimes that's very surprising, right? Because some of these people who are very successful and who've succeeded in everything else, when they come to this, I would say almost crossroads, and trying to look at what next, and when they have this period of uncertainty and confusion, you find that all these successful people who, uh, when others look at them, we think that, oh my God, they're so great, they've achieved so much, but they have so much of self-doubt. Maybe on the outside there is a brave front, but inside there's a lot of self-doubt. And doing all of this, having that moment of pause, having some play built in, all that will then, and going and seeking out what excites you, all that will then kind of help to bolster that confidence once again. And then it's just momentum takes over, and then you have one thing after the other happening.
Yeah, it's really almost like a journey of discovery. Like people start to realize things about themselves that they hadn't paused long enough to think about before. Right?
Absolutely. So that's why I don't think this is, and I say this to to people I speak to the ones to people I coach, that this is not something that, oh, I'm going to do this one session and I'm going to come back with answers, because I don't know. Can you get the answers in that one session? Fine, then I'm happy for you. But then it is a process of discovery, and the discovery depends on each and every individual, how ready you are, at what stage in life you are, and how accepting you are to go on this journey. So it's not something which is like, okay, once give me the 5 steps, I will do them, and that's it. I'm enlightened now.
Absolutely. And I would think that you'd almost have to have a coaching session and then time for reflection and to work things out in your head. And because if someone is helping you to reframe at a certain point in your life, I mean, it's a lot of pausing, reflecting, and then exploring, and then reflecting. And you know what I mean? Like, so it's more of a journey than like a one-hit wonder. Like you come in and, oh, I see the light, and then that's it. I would think that it would take several sessions to get them through that process.
Absolutely. Like someone said, the only purpose of life is trying to learn what is the purpose of life. So
Exactly.
you spend your life trying to learn what the purpose of life is. So it's the same thing, right? We go through, once we pass one hurdle, then another thing comes up. But it's just having those moments of pause which help us to reframe and reorient ourselves, so we kind of are re-energized for the next phase in our life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This has been amazing, Nisha. I want to finish with the one icebreaker question that always tells us so much about every guest we have on. If you had your own late night talk show, who would be your first guest? Dead or alive? Anybody? Who would be your first person?
That's a very interesting question. I wish I had more time to think about it, but for me, I think it would have been my grandmother.
Did you know
Because yes, I knew her, but by the time I knew her, it was my great grandmother actually. She was almost in her 90s and senile. And so, but I've heard stories about her, how she was this really strong woman who lost her husband, so single-handedly, ran the entire household. Not just that, she had a daughter and a son-in-law, because they were wealthy, but then lost all their money. And so the son-in-law didn't do anything. So she had to support the entire family. So So the single woman in those days, with no education, but how she managed. So I would have loved to have had that conversation with her to understand what was going through in her head, and
Yeah.
how did she think of her role as a woman, and also as a provider for the family, right? And they were a very large family. I think her daughter had 7 kids, so it's not a small family. But she managed to do
Yeah.
that very well, and so I think she's one person that I would really like to
And
interview
what
and
life
meet.
was like then too. Like,
Absolutely, yeah. It
because
was.
we have to put it in context of what our environment is as well, which makes some people even more extraordinary.
Of course, because especially for a woman living in India in those times, I know it must have been very, very difficult without support, without male support. I consider myself extremely fortunate because even when I was growing up, not many daughters were allowed to take over the family business or work in the family business. But my family was supportive enough. But I could only imagine how difficult it was for my grandmother, and also difficult times they were going through. India itself was going through in those days. This was 50s and 60s, going through a very difficult period economically. And during that time, to like put all these kids through school, make sure that they were all taken care of. And as a woman, single woman, I think that must have been tremendous responsibility. And I've also seen the grit and determination that she had. And I always believe that I try to kind of try to model myself after her because I said, okay, that's how I want to be. I want to be this strong woman. And so, yeah, I really think that she probably could have shared many lessons which are relevant even today.
And did you know her at all, or was she gone by the time you were aware enough to?
No, I did. I knew her, and what she did in her moments of when she was coherent enough, she would tell me things about how difficult it was, how she went and did, got things done, and how with very limited resources, she could stretch resources to make sure that everyone was provided for.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Nisha. This has been an absolute pleasure and awesome to learn about your journey, because I think your journey represents a lot of people's journeys at the surface level as far as the feelings that you had at the time that they were happening. And so I think it helps put things in perspective that really we're not alone and other people are feeling this too. And that you can be successful and you can get to a happy place again.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I think that's the whole thing. It's never too late, and it's never impossible to change tracks and to move to a path which, as you mentioned, we're destined for.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Leanne.